Welcome to the WRAL Daily Download. I'm Elizabeth Holmes. College football season kicks off soon, and if your team is in the ACC, you can make them more money just by watching them on TV. Those behind the moves say it's not just a way to help the teams make more money, but also make them better. WRAL sports investigative reporter Brian Murphy is with us now to explain. Hi, Brian. Thanks for joining us.
Hey, thanks for having me.
I think we should start with just breaking down what this means. Break this down for people who are not as deep into the sports world.
Sure. The ACC has been around for over 70 years, and throughout that time, whatever money the league took in, they distributed to all the members equally, no matter how good you are or how bad you are. And this year, for the first time, they will distribute some of that revenue based on how many television viewers you got. Last year, they added something about success initiatives. So depending on how well you did and how well you did in the postseason, you got extra money. And now they've expanded that. And so some of the distribution will be based on how many TV viewers you get.
And why do something like this? Where did this kind of all start?
Well, it all started with lawsuits. Clemson and Florida State sued the ACC. The ACC countersued them. They spent millions of dollars fighting each other before reaching a settlement earlier this year. And part of that settlement was we'll try to get more money to the schools that invest more in football and men's basketball. And Clemson and Florida State, obviously the top brands in football in this conference, saying like we should get something back for carrying the TV ratings, for carrying the league, on the field. And so this was kind of the compromise that they reached, that they would distribute some of their revenue based on brands or viewership data.
How much money could this essentially bring in? I know your reporting has kind of broken it down by school.
Yeah, the ACC made $711 million last year, for the 23-24 season. They're going to make even more in the season that just passed. We don't have that data yet. And they distributed about $45 million to each school. So that was very even. Some got maybe $1 million less, some maybe got $1 million more, but it was $44.9 million went to each full member. Under this new system, a school could earn $65 million and another school could earn $35 million. So there could be a wide discrepancy between schools. WRAL is projecting what the Success Initiative is going to yield, and that will yield about $8 million for Clemson at the top. Then there are 3 schools that didn't make anything from the Success Initiative. So a wide variety there. And then when you add in the viewership, we could be seeing a spread of up to $30 million between the top earning schools and the bottom earning schools. Will
some schools have an advantage over the other?
Yeah, no doubt. Like Virginia Tech has put together this presentation. Now, all this, the ACC has all this data. It's all under wraps. They won't let it out. It's part of this confidential lawsuit, and some of it's redacted. But Virginia Tech put together its own projections for who would benefit the most from this viewership. And according to their projections, it's not that surprising that Clemson and Florida State are 1 and 2 in the football viewership. It changes based on the year, but they're 1 and 2. Miami is always number 3. And then it kind of jockeys around who's 4, 5, and 6. North Carolina is usually in that mix. On the basketball side, it's as you would expect. It is Duke always number 1, UNC always number 2, and then Virginia, Louisville, and Syracuse sort of jockey between 3, 4, and 5. And so those schools will benefit. I mean, I've done previous reporting that, when you get on ABC, and obviously that's going to generate the biggest audience, it's really 4 schools that do that. It's Clemson, Florida State, Miami, and occasionally North Carolina. And if you're not playing one of those 4 schools, and we'll throw Notre Dame in there too, even though they're not an ACC member, if you're not playing one of those 5 schools, you don't get on ABC. And so obviously the ABC games are critical. Virginia Tech's presentation indicates being on ABC or ESPN as opposed to one of the secondary networks, it may be worth about $500,000 under this plan.
That's interesting. And I know you spoke briefly about basketball. I want to go back to football and North Carolina because all eyes are on North Carolina football right now. Bill Belichick coming on the scene. Will that ultimately change things, or will that benefit just the Tar Heels alone?
Well, if there was ever a good time to hire a Hall of Fame coach and get all this attention, now is the time. Obviously, going into this first year of the viewership distribution, as the ACC calls it. Look, with Bill Belichick, they're going to be on primetime for the opener on Labor Day. That's going to draw a big audience. They're the only game happening at that time. I expect a monster rating for that game. They'll also be on ESPN at least 2 other times. They have Friday night games at Cal and at Syracuse. But almost every other game is going to get picked up by somebody. They play Clemson, a game that probably is going to end up on ABC if UNC hangs in there for the first couple weeks of the season and is not a disaster. So, yes, they're going to get a lot of eyeballs. I mean, a lot of people compare this to what Deion Sanders did at Colorado. And Fox and ESPN were fighting to get Colorado games. They both sent their pregame shows out there. We're seeing similar things with Bill Belichick. A makeshift pregame show is going to come with Nick Saban and Pat McAfee and others before the TCU game, which is on a Monday. So it's not their regular ESPN College Game Day, but they're creating a new show basically for this one event. And I would imagine that ESPN is going to want to put Carolina football on as much as they can this year. And so that will be really, really helpful for the Tar Heels and whoever they play, right? They don't divide it out on, if Carolina plays State, they don't say, well, these viewers are for Carolina and these viewers are State. They all get credit for the viewers, both teams. It can work the other way. NC State's biggest game of this year is probably going to be its game at Notre Dame. Notre Dame airs all their games on NBC, due to be a huge audience for that game. Except that game was deemed as the Peacock exclusive game. So instead of being on NBC, big NBC where everybody can watch, it's going to be on Peacock. That's really going to hurt. And we just mentioned maybe $500,000 difference between being on a linear network and being on a different network. Streaming may even be smaller, so that gap may be even bigger. And so NC State, kind of got the bad end of the draw here with that one. The good news for NC State, these are 5-year rolling averages, so even though this year will count the most, it won't be the only determining factor in who gets this money.
All right, we'll be right back. You just mentioned Peacock. My next question for you was going to be, how does streaming play a role in this? Does it make it more challenging for these teams?
Yeah, the ACC has told me that they are going to count everything. So even though we only get television ratings for some networks, like the ACC network doesn't usually register. We don't get good data necessarily on how many people are watching. The ACC does. The ACC gets that kind of data, and they get it for all these networks. They get it for Peacock. They'll get it for the CW. Anywhere that a game may appear, the ACC will have that data. So it's not that Peacock will be not counted at all. It'll be counted. It'll just probably draw a smaller audience. But no, streaming, all that. And as ESPN moves to more and more streaming, they're going to release their flagship over-the-top app here in a couple of months. There may be people who cut the cord and only watch through that. And so the ACC needs a way to capture all of that viewership, and they think that they have that.
We are in North Carolina. Obviously, we're getting excited about football. Bill Belichick is here. But basketball season is kind of like our bread and butter, right? How does basketball, does it differ in any way, or is it kind of the same rules apply here when it comes to basketball and distribution?
Yeah, so let me back up one step. The ACC has two different media rights deals. They have a base media rights deal with ESPN, and then they have the ACC network, which they share in the revenues 50-50 with ESPN. This viewership affects that base deal, and it's 40% of that money from the base deal will be spread equally. 60% will go into viewership. And of that 60%, 75% of that will be determined by football. But that means 25% will be determined by men's basketball. This is important for a couple of reasons. One, the ACC has made its history and its tradition and its legacy in men's basketball. And secondly, they've really struggled in men's basketball recently. So this is a way to incentivize schools to be good in men's basketball as well. And the other thing is, there are some schools that are probably not going to be good in football. I mean, let's the Boston Colleges of the world, Wake Forest. Now, they've had some moments, but they're probably not on a year in and year out basis going to compete for some of those other viewership dollars. But basketball, they can be very good. Duke, for example, has been good in football, but doesn't draw necessarily the viewership. But in basketball, they're probably going to be the number one team in the basketball viewership. So I think this was a way for the ACC to send some money to men's basketball. They want to get better in men's basketball. They want to, kind of restore their glory in men's basketball. And it's also a way for other schools to benefit from this, not just your big football brands.
Are teams happy about this? Does it create some challenges? How are they feeling about all this?
Yeah, I think they think it's a creative solution, right? There was this problem of your two biggest football brands suing the league and maybe leaving. And so this is a way to keep them happy, but also give everyone a chance. There are no guarantees. Florida State had a terrible season last year in football. They didn't rank in the, they didn't have games on ABC because they were so bad last year. So I think other schools, Boo Corrigan, the athletic director at NC State, said, hey, this is a creative solution and the opportunity is out there for us. If you look at NC State's schedule, they could easily be 6-0 going into that Notre Dame game, in which case they'll probably get more games on national television. And so I think, some schools are going to lose money. There's no doubt. That $45 million that schools get this year, some of them may get less than that next year. However, that's better than the entire ACC imploding and then being left with no conference home. So there are trade-offs. The last trade-off, I think, how do you schedule? Do you try to schedule big non-conference games, Tennessee, Colorado, Alabama? Florida State's playing Alabama this year, to get on network television? Or do you say, hey, there's also a bonus if you go to a bowl game? So maybe we should schedule some easier teams so that we can win those games, and then we can get to 6 wins, get to 7 wins, and go to a bowl game. So I think each individual athletic department is going to have to make decisions about how they attack this as well.
Are we going to see any kind of changes from the top level to get viewers to actually turn on their TVs or maybe stream? Will we see any kind of new marketing schemes for that at all?
The ACC wants to grow the pie as well. So they're hiring a chief revenue officer. They're hiring chief branding and marketing officers. They're beefing up in much the way that athletic departments are beefing up their revenue generation schemes as well. I think you'll see athletic directors, coaches say, hey, turn our game on before you come to the stadium, or turn it on 2 TVs while you're at home. You may see people streaming while they're in the stadium as well. I've seen some people say, well, I'm not going to watch my opponent or my rival's game because that will help him or them. And it'll be interesting to see if there's any of that. I doubt that will happen, but in part because the numbers are so large. Like if you add all the numbers of people watching ACC football, I mean, we're probably talking close to 500 million maybe over the course of a year when you add everything together. And so 1 or 2 individual people making those choices probably won't make a huge difference. But what it will incentivize, and Jim Phillips, the commissioner of the ACC, said, invest in your team, put a good product on the field, play good opponents, win games, and you'll see more of this revenue. The most interesting thing to me is it's a stark departure from the way that it's been done for 70 years. And the ACC is kind of leading the charge on this. Some other conferences do give money to teams that do better. No other conference breaks down on viewership or TV ratings.
Last question for you. Do we ultimately think that this will make some ACC teams better in football, men's basketball? Do you think that that will work?
I think we'll certainly see some better opponents. I think they'll want to try to schedule better to get some of these opportunities. I think teams that see a direct return, I mean, we're seeing it at North Carolina now. I don't think this is the only reason why, but I think if you invest in a sport and then you see a return on that it may encourage more schools to say, why can't we do that? Why can't we be a school that pops up and suddenly has a great season? I would add women's basketball is included in the success initiatives as well. So, and that's a relatively small, you can invest a small amount and have a big return in women's basketball. So there are this creates incentives at various different points for athletic departments. It's going to be up to them to decide how they allocate their revenue.
All right. Well, Brian, thanks so much for joining us. And thank you for listening to the WRAL Daily Download. If you've listened to this podcast on WRAL.com or the WRAL News app, you can also find it in Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or anywhere you listen to podcasts. Follow the show so you don't miss an episode.